It is the sport that people across the nation know San Diego State for, and our 2020-2021 season begins this week on Wednesday. That's tomorrow at 7:30. They tip off against number 21 ranked UCLA, the Bruins. Brian, we have to go back to the end of the last season and how much of a bummer the way it ended. We were anticipating a run in the NCAA tournament for the Aztecs. They were ranked top 10. I believe they finished ranked number 6 when everything was shut down. Just let's go back a little bit and reminisce at how that was and just some of your memories from last year.
Oh man, last year was exciting. I mean, starting the season with 26 straight wins, winning the MAP, being the last undefeated team in the nation, getting up to number 4 in the rankings. Yeah, I mean, there was just so much excitement and a lot to root for. The team kind of brought the city back because, you know, in the late 2000 decade, I don't even know how we're supposed to classify that decade, but you know, the 2007, 8, 9 teams, and then 2011, obviously with Kawhi, and the city was just roaring for Aztecs basketball. And then over the last decade, they've been pretty solid, but this was the team that really brought them back to the forefront and brought the city back on the side of the Aztecs. Viejas was bumping again, and the show was back, and it was just such an exciting year, a lot of national attention, getting to see a player like Malachi Flynn, who just had an unbelievable season, an All-American, consensus All-American on all the lists. Brian Dutcher as the National Coach of the Year, just exceeding all expectations. You know, it was such a fun season, and I really thought they were built for a deep tournament run. It was a really experienced team. It looked like we were probably going to get Nathan Mensah back for the tournament. And then to have it all come crashing down for a reason, you know, they didn't even get to play it out on the court. It was COVID that took it away. And it just felt so San Diego to have a team that was probably outside of that 2011 team, the best positioned team to make a deep run in the tournament. And there was no really great teams in college basketball, so it seemed like, you know, the door was open for the Aztecs to potentially put something together, and I felt like the Final Four wasn't out of the question for this team. So they it's just sad that was taken away from them.
Yeah, it was just an incredibly balanced team, probably the best, most balanced team we've seen during the Steve Fisher, Brian Dutcher eras. You had that 2011 team like you had, but I remember, you know, maybe Coach Dutcher and even some media people saying that this last year's team was better offensively than that 2011 team. So, frustrating, man. But in recent news, it was really cool to see Malachi Flynn being drafted by the Toronto Raptors. Just a nod to him and the season he had last year. We truly hope that he has success at the next level. I will ask you, Brian, do you think that he will have success, or maybe what do you think his game will look like at the NBA level?
I think so much of NBA success, at least early on for draft picks, is what team they happen to land on. And I think Malachi landed in the perfect spot with the Raptors. The Toronto, don't call me Tampa Raptors. Well, Canada's still shut down. They're going to start out in Tampa. But right now, Tampa's the center of the sports world. So that's not a bad place to end up. But yeah, I think Malachi is going to have a ton of success. He's a general out there on the floor, shoots it well in the clutch. He's not afraid. He plays really good defense. He just seems like a perfect fit for the Toronto Raptors. And I think he couldn't have landed in a better place. It was still in the first round, which is exciting because San Diego State has only had 2 first-rounders in its history. So it was nice to have that. And yeah, I don't know. I just think it was a perfect fit.
Yeah, we certainly hope the best for Malachi going forward. Uh, with this year's team, we do have a few starters returning. We'll talk about the individual players in just a bit, but let's look at our first matchup. It'll be tomorrow, as I said, in a small little tournament that is between San Diego State, UCLA, and then UC Irvine and Pepperdine. UC Irvine and Pepperdine will play on tomorrow, tipping off at 3:30 before the Aztecs and Bruins. But man, Brian, these Bruins are ranked number 21. They finished last year at 9-12. They were about number 2 in the Pac-12 there. The Aztecs not ranked this year after having such a successful season. Definitely a bit of a surprise to see that. Yeah. But I mean, Coach Brian Dutcher returns, of course, for his 4th season at the helm, and you see some of those other non-conference teams the Aztecs will be taking on this year. Another top 25 team, a Pac-12 team there with Arizona State, a St. Mary's team. That's always tough. They play in that West Coast Conference, always battling with Gonzaga, and then UC Irvine. That's the team that the Aztecs will play on Friday as the second game in this small tournament we have going on at Viejas. Brian, feeling some disrespect about the non-ranking for the Aztecs?
A little bit, but that more is just because, San Diego State, I don't know what they have to do to get any type of preseason respect. They always outperform what people think of their expectations, but they're so rarely given preseason accolades outside of predicted to win the Mountain West. So I would love for them to not have to go 15-0 before they start getting consideration for the rankings. But if you look at this non-conference schedule again, it's about as stacked as you can possibly get for a COVID season. You've got UCLA and Arizona State, which are the top 2 teams in the Pac-12. BYU and St. Mary's, like you said, are right behind Gonzaga as the second and third best teams in the West Coast Conference. And UC Irvine is predicted to win the Big West. So you've got, of these teams, this outside of playing against Gonzaga or maybe University of Arizona, who's actually not as good as UCLA and Arizona State this year, I don't think you could put together a better non-conference slate. So if the Aztecs can beat UCLA, beat UC Irvine, and then play well against Arizona State, I think they should be ranked. I think they put together a great schedule here of non-conference opponents to give them some respect. Put a little respect on that name. And I'm fired up to see what happens. And it all starts tomorrow night. I can't believe it.
It's crazy, man. It's crazy that we got here. UCLA was at the bottom of the rankings in their conference last year before they finished their season at 11-3. So we'll see how they look. I do know their coach Mick Cronin, kind of was like, beware. Yes, we may be ranked top 25, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything at this point. So obviously, it's going to be 2 new teams to some degree. As I mentioned, the Aztecs will have 3 starters returning this year in their lineup. That would be Matt Mitchell, Jordan Shackle, along with Nathan Mensah. Of course, Matt Mitchell, just kind of that veteran presence that you love having on your team, averaged 12 points a game and 5 rebounds. Shackle, 10 points a game. And then Mensah, who you mentioned, Brian, only started the season and then went down with that injury. One of those big guys inside that, could maybe average 10 and 10. So it'll definitely be good to see him return as well. Any other starters or any other returners, I should say, Brian, that you maybe have an eye on this season?
Well, I'm really excited to see the step that Matt Mitchell takes, because he really turned it on last season and became a huge factor for this team. Jordan Shackle and Matt Mitchell, they've been at San Diego State this entire time. This is clearly going to be their team. So just to see how those guys perform, it seems like San Diego State, when they get seniors that come through the program the entire time, those guys just put up ridiculous numbers their senior year. So I am excited to see how that plays out. And then I want to see how Nathan Mensah comes back. It was such a tough break that he got a year ago, having a condition that kept him off the floor. It wasn't even an injury. It was a heart condition, and something that probably drove him crazy because you can't see it. It's just there in the background. And yeah, so to see how he comes back, I am very excited about that. And then the Aztecs, they've got a couple of transfers that I'm very excited about as well. So we will bring that list up here and take a look. The one that I'm the most excited about here is Gomez from Cal State Northridge. He led the Big West last year in scoring, three-point shooting, three-point percentage, free throw percentage. Like, this guy, he's only 5'8", a small guy, but he can score, he can fill it up from the outside, and I think he's going to be a great complement to this squad. The transfer from Maryland, Joshua Tomei, he's a big guy who hasn't gotten a ton of minutes, but he's 6'9" and 230 pounds, and the kind of presence down low that could probably just be a beast for the Aztecs. They might not need him to score much, but if he can play defense, then he can play for Coach Dutcher. So I'm very excited about him. And then as we'll look here at some of the freshmen that the Aztecs have, they've got a couple of pretty solid ones, and I'm looking forward to seeing mostly Lamont Butler out of Riverside Poly. He was one of the best players in the Southern section. He was a top 50 point guard, a 4-star recruit. Che Evans, also a 4-star recruit as well. And then Keith Dinwiddie out of Fairfax. He turned it on, became a really good player in his last couple of years. Won a couple of LA City section open division championships there at Fairfax. Che Evans coming out of Philly. So bring him into San Diego here, give him a little bit of West Coast flavor and see what happens. But yeah, I'm really excited about this Aztecs team. There's a ton of potential. They're going to have, Coach Dutcher has said he thinks that they could play 10 deep and not really have any drop-off. So especially in a COVID season, to have guys who, you can play deep, there's probably going to be issues with endurance and being able to play. They also have to play on the road in the Mountain West, which is difficult because you've got altitude at all these venues. So yeah, having depth is going to be huge for this Aztec team.
Yeah, that's a great point, Brian. And not only are they going to be playing in these different locations, it's also going to be kind of a crunched season compared to years past, just in the sense that they have those non-conference games, and then they play every single team in their conference. And then the last series with Boise State is February 25 and February 27. So normally you're back another week or two going into the Mountain West Conference tournament. So that's just going to be a lot of games in a short amount of time for these guys. You do see their schedule there with the home opponents. We said, early on, I think last week, that against Colorado State, it was set to be December 12th and December 3rd and December 5th for that first series. But that, as you said, Brian, we still don't know about that. But yeah, you see the rest of the schedule there at home for the Aztecs.
Yeah, so these home opponents, you like to see someone like Boise State come into town, Nevada, Wyoming, Colorado State. It's good to bring them to Viejas when you have to play 2 games because you're playing at sea level versus going and playing at altitude at Wyoming. I can't imagine playing back-to-back like a Thursday, Saturday in Wyoming. That Saturday game would just be treacherous. So I think they got a favorable home schedule. And then as we look here at the away opponents, I think that San Diego State, yeah, they pulled a pretty decent schedule here. They play at UNLV, where they've always had a ton of success. They play at Utah State, at Air Force, and at New Mexico are the two altitude games. But again, they've had a ton of success at the Pit in New Mexico, and yet you get to play there with no fans. So, or if they have fans, it'll be limited. That's a place where normally the crowd becomes a huge impact. That's seen like Viejas as one of the best facilities and crowds and environments in college basketball. So getting to play them with no fans and having that be one of only two high altitude series, I think the Aztecs got a pretty decent schedule here.
So for another year, it looks like the Aztecs are picked to finish first in the Mountain West Conference by the media. They've pretty much been there or voted second going into the season the last 7 or 8 years, I want to say.
Yep.
So there's definitely the expectation, especially from what we saw last year. Is there anything else, any particular aspect of this team or the coaching that you're looking forward to this season, Brian?
Well, I love Brian Dutcher and what his staff has done. So it's always fun to watch them play. You know they're going to play really good defense. That's something that from the Steve Fisher times till now, that's always going to be at the forefront of Aztecs basketball. So that is always something that I'm looking forward to. But yeah, just this season, because of COVID and everything, and because of how last season ended, there are so many question marks. And the only thing that I know for sure is the Aztecs are going to play monster defense. I think they have enough scoring. Matt Mitchell became a scoring threat last year. Jordan Shackle has always been able to shoot the basketball well. And then this transfer from Northridge, who can shoot the three as well, like he could just be another offensive threat out there. If Nathan Mensah can come back healthy and be a stud, I think this could be another really good Aztec team. I don't know if they're going to be 25-0 good, because right now they've got 25 games on the schedule, but I could imagine seeing them, be 22-3, 23-2, high end. I can't see them going worse than, 18-7 or so. So very high expectations this year, even though the season could be strange and who knows when games are canceled or not. And yeah, the COVID piece is, I guess, the X factor once again. And then looking at the NCAA tournament, is there going to be a tournament with 68 teams? Are they going to go down to 48 or 16, just bypass the actual tournament? That's yet to be seen as well. I think it was ESPN put out their college basketball bracketology, and they're putting out different versions of it. It's not just a 68-team tournament this year. They've got a 16-team version and a 48, and just to see, because we don't know what's going to happen the rest of the way. So a lot of unknowns, but a lot of excitement here in San Diego. Another Brian Dutcher squad we get to watch.
Yeah, man, it'll be good to see Aztec basketball return. One of the few sports institutions you can count on here in San Diego in recent years or within the last couple of decades. So really excited to see what the Aztecs team looks like this year.